Hey everyone, welcome to Central Texas Gardening. In today's video, I'm going to show y'all how I trim my onion seedlings, as well as we're going to feed them with their first dose of liquid fertilizer. But first off, if you haven't done so, I recommend you go watch my part one first video on starting onions from seed. That'll kind of give you a good backdrop of how I got from that point to where I'm at today. But this is the next milestone in the process, is from when I started from seed. This is my big next milestone, which is getting them trimmed down and feeding them their liquid fertilizer. So first, a quick few things you're going to need. Obviously, you're going to need your onion seedlings. You're going to need a nice empty 1 gallon jug. We use a lot of distilled water with the kids and their humidifiers at night, especially in the winter time. So I like to keep these. They're good for not just this, but you'll see in the spring, I also use these to cover up my tomato plants in the garden if we happen to get a late winter freeze or early spring freeze. Also some gardening scissors, which I'll use to cut. You don't have to have anything just like this. Any pair of scissors will really work for the process of just trimming them down. Okay, so first we're going to trim these. Basically, this is how I do it. I know everyone has different methods on doing it, but this is how I do it, and it's worked for me in the past. Once they get to about, I don't know, they're about 4 to 5 inches tall or so, I like to trim them off, especially some of these dead leaves from the original sprouting onion that came up. As you can see, some of these are already starting their second set of leaves on here. So I want to go ahead and trim them down. What that does is the plant's going to focus more of its energy in developing the roots in the soil rather than wanting to just keep going up like that. So that's the main reason you want to keep these trimmed. You want to promote really good root growth in the soil. Okay, so basically this is a fairly easy process here. I'm just going to take my scissors. I just kind of run them down here. Like I said, this is probably one of the shorter pods I have, but they're running about 4 to 5 inches tall. And all I want to do is trim them back to about 3 inches or so. Again, that's going to promote some better root growth in the soil. You want to focus this energy on growing roots down in here rather than wasting your time letting them grow up. Because if you let them grow up too tall, they're going to start flopping and falling all over the place. And you don't want that. You want to get some good, strong root growth in there. So again, similar process. I'm just going to take them, just cut them down to about 3 inches or so, and you'll be good to go with that. Okay, so I got them all down to about 3 inches or so. A couple little stragglers here that I missed, but so they got their first haircut here. So let's go outside and we're going to mix up some liquid fertilizer. And I'm going to show you how I water these from the bottom. I don't water them from the top, and I'll explain why I do water them from the bottom. I switched from that a couple years ago, and I've had better results from watering them from the bottom instead of going from the top here. So let's go get that liquid fertilizer mixed. Okay, so we're out here. We're in my garage. Normally I like to do this out in my driveway or in the garden or in the backyard somewhere, but it's just so windy today that I decided we need to do this in the garage. You know, you're in Texas when I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt today, and the low is supposed to be 10 degrees in about 2 or 3 days. So first of all, this is the liquid fertilizer I use. There's no particular reason why I choose this one other than that it works for me. I don't get paid or anything from Amazon or anyone for this. I just wanted to share. This is the one I use, and I have good luck with it. So this is what we're going to use. But since we're fertilizing onion seedlings, or any seedlings for that matter, we're going to use half strength of what it says on the back. In my case, I only need a ½ gallon of water to water these. I only have those 2 trays you saw. So it's just going to be a ½ gallon. So I'm actually going to do half of the concentration plus another half, since it's just half a gallon. So let me get that mixed up. I'm just going to pour that in my gallon of water there. Again, I'm sorry for the wind, guys. It's very, very windy today. but I like to mix this outdoors. So now that's in there, just give it a good shake. And then we're good to go. Let's go inside. I'll show you how I water them from the bottom up instead of from the top. Okay, now we're back inside. I have my liquid fertilizer mixed. So now I'm ready to water these. And how I water these, I just fill up the bottom of my trays and I bottom water these. So the roots already have some roots coming out of there. So the roots and the soil will soak up the water from the bottom up. The main reason I've switched to doing that is in the past when I've watered it from the top, especially for indoor plants, I tended to get green algae or some kind of white fungus or something growing on this soil over time. I think I attributed that to watering from the top so much, so I switched from to watering to the bottom, and I don't get that phenomenon to happen quite as often when I do that. So that's the main reason I water from the bottom. And overall, it's just easier and less messy. So again, I only need a half gallon for this purpose. If you have more trays, you're going to need more. But for this, I just need a half a gallon. That's probably even going to be too much. So all I'm going to do, just pour it into my trays here. And I don't have to come up too much. It's about a quarter inch of water. So it's coming up right to about right there, right at the bottom. Only about a quarter inch. You don't need a lot of water. You'd be surprised how easy it is for these plants to suck up this water here. So I'll do the same thing on my other tray here. That one's a little higher, so sometimes it's a little bit of a balancing act. I like to get them as similar as possible. Okay, so I've got my liquid fertilizer in there. Now, how long you keep them in here kind of can vary. I typically like to leave them in here for about 15 to 20 minutes. That's enough time for the plants to pull up and the soil to pull up all that liquid fertilizer up in there. One easy way to tell is if you don't have a lot of time is come back 15-20 minutes, feel the top of your soil. If you know how it was before you did it and you come back and it's looking a lot more wet on top, then it's done. It's pulled up all the liquid that it could to the top. So once you start seeing that, you can consider yourself done. Sometimes after 15 or 20 minutes, I might not get that on all of them, but you can be rest assured that it's come up enough to the roots are getting what they need. So after 15 or 20 minutes, I'll come back and dump these. Okay, so while these are soaking up the liquid fertilizer, I actually want to come back and revisit when should you apply your first liquid fertilizer. And what I always try and tell people is whenever you get your second or third sets of true leaves. When I say true leaves, what do you mean? So let's look at one of these plants right here. If you could see this one right here. As you can see, there's 2 leaves right there. Now I can't tell you which one was the original leaf here since I've trimmed them. I believe it's this one right here on the right, but you can see this second one that came up, that's one of your true leaves that come up. So once you get your second, or you could probably wait till you get your third one in, but I like when this second one starts growing and it's getting almost as tall as the original leaf that grew from the seed, that's when I know I need to apply my liquid fertilizer. So again, when you get your second set or third set of true leaves, that's when you want to do your first liquid fertilizer feeding to your plants. Now, how often should you do it? I tend to do it every 2 weeks or so. There is watering I do in between that. Not too often, maybe just 1 or 2 days. Again, it depends on what the plant needs. Now, obviously, if it looks dry on top, you're going to want to water it. But for using liquid fertilizer, you want to try and limit that as much as you can. You don't want to over-fertilize your plants. So that's why I try and stick to a 2-week schedule. I tend to transplant these into the ground around late February. So this being my first liquid fertilizer feeding, I'm probably going to only end up doing it about 3 times or so. There might be a fourth one thrown in there, I'm not sure yet, but I tend to try and stick to a 2-week schedule for fertilizing. Again, you don't want to do this too often. It can be actually harmful to the plant, so don't over fertilize. Just do typical watering in between applying your liquid fertilizer. So let's let these sit for a little while, and then I'll come back and we'll dump out the liquid fertilizer and we should be good to go. Okay, so I have the leftover liquid fertilizer poured outside. I rinsed out both trays. I highly recommend you do that a couple times. As some of you may know, liquid fertilizer does not smell very good, so I highly recommend you rinse out your trays, especially if you have your seeds indoors, because this stuff does smell. Rinse it out. Don't bother with having to smell it every time you walk into the room where these seeds are. So a quick recap of what we did. We trimmed our onion seedlings. When they get to about 4 or 5 inches, I like to trim them back to about 3 inches, and I'll continue to do that every so often. Number 2, we applied some liquid fertilizer to these onions. Again, I pour them directly in the trays. I bottom water them up. I don't like to water them from the top. You want to do this about every 2 weeks or so with your onions, with a little bit of watering in between, depending on how dry the soil might look up top. And other than that, that's kind of the second milestone, and that's why I wanted to do this video. My next milestone is obviously going to be transplanting these out into the garden and how I do that. So be on the lookout around late February for that video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Be on the lookout for part 3 of my onion seedling videos towards the end of February when I transplant these out into the garden. Thanks, y'all.